Mhm. Revised curfew in place for the British Virgin Islands, and we're bringing you all the details.
Keeping our children safe from online child sexual abuse and exploitation. What parents in the British Virgin Islands should know. All this and more when 284 News returns. Is business slow? Cash flow down? Hosting an upcoming event? We can help. Advertise with 284 Media and take your business or event to the next level by enhancing your present marketing and messaging strategies. Allow our team of experts to create a personalized ad that sets your business apart from all the rest. This could be your business or event. So, what are you waiting for? Contact our marketing team at 284media@cctbvi.com. Advertising with us works. Welcome everybody. It's Thursday, April 2nd, 2020. I'm Ron Grant.
And I am Javon Wilson, so thrilled to be back
Indeed.
on set here at 284 Media. Now, Ron, as we all know, the curfew has now been revised with strict new measures.
Yes.
From today, Thursday, until April 16th, the BVI is now under a mandatory curfew, of course, with relaxed measures for the first 3 days beginning today. How are you feeling about that, Ron?
Well, Jovan, in the British Virgin Islands today was quite, it was a beautiful day, but it's still very busy. Lots of hysteria around the country, a lot of persons coming out to making sure that they have their essentials. And I'm so glad you brought up that point because I want to begin our newscast. I want to take this time, Jovan, to send a special thank you to each and every essential worker in the British Virgin Islands right now, from the supermarket to the men working on the street, to our doctors, to our supermarket attendants, everyone that's playing a role in making sure that all Virgin Islanders have their essential items that they need going into the 24-hour lockdown. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's remarkable how we've pulled together media professionals as well as our other counterparts, making sure that the persons and in our community are informed. And I think it's remarkable that we're pulling together, really pulling together at such a critical point.
Definitely, and putting ourselves at risk
Yes.
while at it, and our families and friends. So we just again want to reiterate our thanks to the BVI public, especially our essential workers, for what they are doing in this time of
Indeed.
crisis. Now, to kick things off, the territory-wide curfew imposed last week and due to expire today, Thursday, has now been extended under revised measures. Effective today, Thursday, April 2nd, from 6 a.m., a new curfew order will see the BVI under a mandatory 24-hour lockdown until April 16th. But like we mentioned, this will be relaxed for 3 days to give residents a chance to utilize essential services in a strict managed approach phased as follows. Now the Premier is going to get into the details. Listen in.
Also, Cabinet approved today that notwithstanding item A that I just read above, persons who fall under the prescribed categories will be allowed to have access to certain services in a limited and managed way from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. from Thursday, 2nd April to Saturday, 4th April 2020, subject to the following. 1. Essential workers listed in the curfew order and those persons shopping for the vulnerable categories can do so from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. 2. Other persons, one per household, will be allowed to access the basic and essential services between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. by surnames. And the surnames as follows. Those with surnames beginning from A through I will be on Thursday, 2nd April. Those surnames beginning with J through R will be on Friday, 3rd April. And those surnames beginning with S through Z will be on Saturday, 4th April.
Viewers, a very detailed regime there from the Premier of the Virgin Islands, Andrew A. Foy. Now, it is also very important to note that the 143 persons under self-quarantine are not allowed to venture outside of their homes to utilize services. Instead, Cabinet approved what is called a new client support center, not only to monitor those persons, but also to ensure that they have access to essentials without having to leave their homes. Now, everyone's questioning at this point which essential services will be operable. And so that list has been revised, as you can see on the screen. It's very specific, so feel free to view that in depth on our 284 media page or, of course, on the government forums. But, Ron, I want to get into a more troubling issue we've been seeing since the curfew has been lifted this morning, or restarted, I should say, this morning. As we heard, only essential workers and persons shopping for the elderly were allowed to shop from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m.
Correct.
However, we've received several reports at our newsroom of people outside of those brackets crowding the businesses. Now, a few things to go over here. First of all, we look at the 3-day stipulation that was in place by the government of the Virgin Islands for us to get out and shop. And while I understand, yes, the government's intentions, Ron, might be in the right place, many persons think that more time consideration should have been given, especially in light of the fact that the entire territory has to shop. Persons are asking for possibly a revise of that regime. What are you thinking, Ron?
Well, Jovan, it's a valid point. A lot of persons in the community have reached out, stating and voicing their opinions that special recognition should have been given to the elderly, as well as more time for essential workers. I do think that is the case, and I do agree that perhaps with all the chaos and again the question of accountability comes to play. It is very difficult, whether it's for the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force or the government, to really control and mandate that these individuals who are between the letters stated would be going to the particular time. As you know, persons have been taking that opportunity to go whether they're scheduled or not. So I do think that perhaps if in fact when it's revised and it's looked at by Saturday, if persons who are still not able to get their items, I do think that consideration should be given to those persons.
Because also, Ron, what we're seeing is some of the essential workers, even those on duty, they're not necessarily allowed out to
Correct.
go and grab their essential, whether it's goods or services in this case. So it's imperative. I know a lot of persons who have been there from morning and
Yes,
still
and
are
still
waiting
unable
to
to
get in as we speak. It begs the question for persons between A to I think it is for today, if those persons are not given a chance to get in and out by 6 p.m., what happens next?
Correct.
All right, there's another issue we're looking at. I mean, this one is, disgusting to even think about in light of the reality of the crisis we're facing. We are hearing the term social distancing. And while, yes, a lot of supermarkets and other businesses would have mastered the social distancing measures within their premises, there's a frightening need now for the outdoor control. And Ron, it really contradicts, when we're looking at it, really contradicts the safety of persons.
Absolutely.
Because for me, it doesn't make sense that you're tightly assembling outside and then following the measures inside. It completely contradicts the system.
Well,
So
Jovan, this was actually one of the concerns when Kyle and I sat down a few days ago. We were concerned with your sentiments as well, that the lifting of the curfew, even for as short a time that it is, would have caused a lot of persons to rushing to locations. And again, that is what we're trying to avoid. So it is a very, very valuable concern.
I think the system needs to be revised. Yes, again, as businesses, we have a responsibility to control what's happening within the building, but we have an equal responsibility now because you are also compromising the health of your staff and persons within your business place if persons outside of that premises are not adhering to the rules. A lot of persons have been recommending re-strategizing, looking at a possible numbering system. There is a protocol at, for example, Road Town Wholesale. You drive up and then you find your parking. Persons would have recommended today, having a personnel from the company stand there, and according to how you drive in, you're given a specific number, and then you have personnel from within the store monitoring the parking lot to ensure that we are going in at the time, according to the time that we came in. So there are a couple of things that we can go over, but one of the things I am kind of worried about is the absence of police reinforcement. Now, we've heard just last night over the press conference that outside of the security measures that will be in place for businesses, of course, private security, police reinforcement should be on the ground to ensure that persons are abiding by the rules. But we have not seen much of that. And I must admit, yes, I know at this point the force may be stretched and they're making rounds across the territory for several other things. But I think police reinforcement will definitely ease the strain and at least help persons to abide more by the rules.
I agree. Jovan, let's just admit for a second that for the many persons who are out and about as essential workers, it is not an easy job making sure that your role is played and making sure that you're protecting the community in whatever aspect that you can. This again takes me back, it's a different example, but it takes me back to 2017 where we had persons who were volunteering non-stop. They were away from their families. The very officers of the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force, they had to be away from their family a lot just to make sure that law and order and duty was enforced. So the role of an essential worker is not a small one. But I do agree that at this pivotal point, we should have been seeing a lot more police presence. Our news team has been at pretty much every supermarket today, and the police presence amongst residents has been very, very small.
All right, and you know, one other thing I want to mention, I think in countries like China, we look around the world, Ron, and you know, in this part of the region, we don't necessarily like rules, but we can look across the world in countries like China, for example, and see why draconian regimes have been way more successful in fighting this epidemic. Now, we all know that China is the epicenter of the coronavirus. This is where it began. Today, the United States have surpassed their numbers, and many persons question why. And we have to look at the model that China follows in those parts of the world. Again, they're very, very strict on their measures.
Agreed.
You know, when the government says to stay home, nobody argues. And you know, even if you still manage to defy those rules, there are heavy, heavy repercussions in place to make those persons an example. So again, strict forceful measures in China and in US and in the US now, because even before now the US president was very relaxed, and I think that's kind of what led to the large numbers in the United States and places like Italy. But we have to look at the model. We don't need to reinvent the wheel in this case. We have to look at the model of what's working in larger nations, and we need to follow them. In my opinion, $1,000 and 12 months imprisonment certainly isn't defying or discouraging, rather, our residents. We've had several arrests within the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force in relating to the violation of these rules. I suppose we raised those fines. And at this point, we don't necessarily want to jail individuals because that's another crisis to manage. But I certainly think it's time we revise those fines and really truly make an example of persons who are not abiding by the rules.
All right. As our territory continues to experience the closing of our schools due to the coronavirus pandemic, most of our children will find more time to be online, accessing the various social media platforms. According to the Global Threat Assessment 2019, 1/3 of the world's population, inclusive of 800 million children, are connected through social media, the internet. At any given moment, there are about 750,000 children predators connected to the internet. These figures can now double because most of our children are home and would spend longer hours meeting old and new friends online. The type of CSAE threats we face are online contact, child sexual abuse of persons your child may very well know and trust, online child sexual exploitation. This includes online luring, grooming, blackmail, sharing and viewing of indecent images of children, live streaming, etc. These can take place through the very mediums that parents approve of, such as WhatsApp, Messenger, Facebook Messenger, FaceTime, Instagram, and Snapchat, just to name a few. Now, the acting detective inspector Kenneth Bob and his team of detectives from the Family and Juvenile Unit of the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force take pride in safeguarding our territory's children. We are therefore taking the time to remind our viewers who are parents at home to pay closer attention to what your children are viewing and who they are making friends with. Some of you may not be computer savvy, and that's okay, but you can educate them on the dangers that they can face online. We are aware that some of our parents fall under the essential workers category as well and may have jobs that require them to be away from home during the curfew. Please be vigilant, viewers. Again, we ask you to please be vigilant. Call and check in as often as you can. The children are the future, and we have to protect them. We have to do everything we can to protect them. All right, Jovan, this is very important, very interesting. Again, since the COVID-19 and persons having to be home, as well as the closure of schools, our society has seen an influx in the social domestic cases, a lot of problems, hidden ills that are really attacking us. It's showing its ugly face, and this particular example of child exploitation is no different. The bandits, the persons that thrive on doing these types of behaviors, they are not slowing down. So we as parents and family members have to be even more vigilant.
Yeah, we have a very, very strong responsibility
Indeed.
this time to protect our children. And like we all know, ever since we were forced into this crisis, a lot of persons are now in line, including our children. A lot of us are also working from home and not necessarily having as much flexibility as we want to manage our children. But it's important that we look at what they're doing online and monitor that, because again, they can be very well exposed to a lot of predators online. I think we could take into account a few things that we can encourage them to do, like having them focus on their school curriculum. And I know a lot of students are still working from home, just monitoring and managing those activities, and also getting them involved in games and other activities, maybe assigning chores to them, just essentially monitoring what they're doing at home. And even within the households, you have to look at, making sure that your children are protected even from who's within the household. So again, just keeping a watchful eye. The kids are our future. We want to ensure that in this time of crisis, they're well protected and managed. Viewers, still ahead, we are taking a look at the BVI hospitality industry amid the COVID-19 virus. We're speaking to Mrs. Julia Dawson, who is the CEO there at Maria's by the Sea. Stick around.
Some claim that the age of a true gentleman is far behind us, but here at 284 Media, we disagree. He may appear in different guises today, but the values and ideals that make him a gent still stand. 284 Media proudly presents its newest talk show, The Art of a Distinguished Gentleman, with yours truly, Ron Grant. A show poised to help guide modern-day men into 21st century distinguished gentlemen. Don't worry, it's not all about suits and bow ties, but raw, real-life lessons that translate to grounded, community-minded, well-rounded men. The Art of a Distinguished Gentleman, a 284 Media production.
Viewers, welcome back to 284 News. Now, we're facing a very sad reality here in the British Virgin Islands, where we see unemployment numbers skyrocketing in light of this crisis. Now, in speaking to the Minister of Labour, Honourable Vincent Wheatley, just a few days ago, I was told that those numbers are currently in the hundreds, and that was a few days ago. I'm sure by now it would have risen significantly.
Yes.
But viewers, as a result of all of this, many persons are left not only without a job, but also without monies for rent, for utility, and in this case, food for the next 14 days. This is why the government of the Virgin Islands has teamed up with the Family Support Network as well as the BVI Red Cross to provide groceries for families in need. So soon enough, you'll be seeing the flyer across the screen. As you can see, while there is a maximum cap to what each person or family is entitled to receive, the help is now available. In speaking to Stephen, a representative from the BVI Red Cross, we were told today that there are 5 locations that will be used for distribution, and that is from tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. daily. Again, as you can see on the screen, those locations are BVI Red Cross, FSN East End Longlow Community Center, the Valerie O. Thomas Community Center, as well as the West End Community Center. Again, the contact numbers are listed on the flyer: 499-0999 or 468-9371. Ron, I know without a doubt this is definitely not something very easy for persons across the territory to do, to come forward and say, you are in a vulnerable position. But please, we are imploring you to reach out, especially if you are in need, to reach out to the relevant authorities. And remember that we're all in this together.
Indeed, and Jovan, it still takes a village to raise a child. It still takes a village to raise a family. It still takes a village. We have to remember that it still takes a village. So at this point, this very crucial point, all we can do is pull together and help those in need.
And Ron, it really warms my heart because this relief, a lot of us might not be privy to those circumstances. A lot of people really live day to day, check to check, within the confines of the British Virgin Islands. And so it really warms my heart that this relief will make a significant difference in the lives of those people who possibly could have gone hungry for the next 14 days. So again, we cannot thank the government, BVI Red Cross, as well as FSN enough. And a kind reminder also from Stephen today. He said persons will be required to walk with a valid ID and proof that indeed they are in need, because while yes, this is to facilitate the needs of the less fortunate in this case, I'm sure we will see a lot of persons coming forward who might not even have a need, so we have to be very careful about that too.
And big shout outs to the BVI Red Cross and FSN for always stepping up to the plate and just doing and going above and beyond. As the territory of the Virgin Islands continues to maneuver through the impacts of COVID-19, one of the hardest hit thus far in the economy is our beloved and highly relied upon hospitality industry. With resorts closed and many jobless, just like you were speaking about, Jovan, many wonder as to what hospitality and the industry would look like for the BVI. Now, I had the honor of sitting down with renowned hotelier, Mrs. Julia Dawson Marshall. She's the general manager of Maria's by the Sea. Ladies and gentlemen, it's important to know that this interview was taped prior to the curfew. So at that time, the hotel was still open, but circumstances have still changed. But she really goes in depth as to sharing what the industry looked like prior to, what it looked to now, and what is her vision moving forward despite of the hardships. Take a look. Mrs. Dawson Marshall, thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful British Virgin Islands Day.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. In wake of COVID-19, obviously it's a much quiet scene here at Maria's by the Sea. In days gone by, your establishment is one of the locally owned who continue to serve the general public as it pertains to hospitality. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of COVID-19, its impact on your business and the industry holistically, tell me a little bit about what the hospitality industry looked like about 2 to 4 months prior to COVID-19.
2 to 4 months ago, we were having what I would call a robust season. We were very optimistic as to where we would be for 2020. The numbers were looking good. The visitors were coming. We had a number of events, meetings scheduled for the earlier part of this year. And overall, we were expecting to have a good 2020.
What does it presently look like?
For lack of a better word, it's grim.
Okay.
Things have been very quiet. All of the events that we had scheduled have been canceled or postponed. All occupancy is at an all-time low, actually practically non-existent.
Wow.
And that's where we are right now. That's on the hotel side, and the restaurant side, things have been very quiet as well, with people honoring the social distancing.
Very important. Now, you spoke a little bit about pretty much grim. Is that by choice? Has your establishment closed down? It closes doors to visitors or the general public?
We are not closed. We continue to remain open. We continue to see persons coming into the restaurant. It is nowhere near before the whole coronavirus pandemic, but we still are open, and we will remain open as long as we are able to do so.
Okay, I want to take you back to the hurricanes of 2017, and I think it's important for us to make reference to this because after the hurricanes of 2017, Maria's by the Sea was one of the first hoteliers and restaurant operations here in the BVI to be able to get back on their feet and serve the general public. And for that, we are most appreciative. What lessons or similarities do you see taking place with the hurricanes of 2017 and now the COVID-19 pandemic?
This is a totally different situation for us than Hurricane Irma. After Hurricane Irma, we were extremely busy, probably even more so than just before the hurricane. This is an all-time slow period, of almost a shutdown for us, even though we are technically not closed. After Hurricane Irma, work was constant, whether it was serving the general public in terms of hotels or meals or maintenance, making repairs. Right now, all sectors are slow. All sectors are almost non-existent.
Yes. Okay. Now, you are a member of the British Virgin Islands Tourist Board. You sit on that board. What does the industry look like from your perspective, not only in sitting on the board, but actually working and being in the industry moving forward? Is this something that you think we can ultimately, absolutely, with hope, recover from? And in what time frame would you say, if you were at liberty to share?
I like to have the matters of the board
Okay.
addressed by either the Premier, who is the Minister of Tourism, or our Chairman of the board, Mrs. Kenesha Sprague.
Okay, respectfully
Speaking,
so.
thank you. On a personal level, I can speak for Maria's by the Sea and to say that we do have hope that come fall, things will, they will never be the same, but things will change and become better. We've already had interest for the month of September for hosting a meeting. So that gives us great optimism.
And at the end of the day, I think that's all we can do, be as optimistic as possible. The industry itself is quite resilient. Are there any options at your establishment for staycations? Any persons who are locals and residents who may want to still enjoy a weekend away? What are your options as it pertains to staycations?
That is something that we're currently looking at.
Okay.
We haven't made any concrete decisions about that yet. We are still being guided by the weekly or almost daily updates by the government in terms of what businesses can and can't do. As you are aware now, all businesses are on a 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Opening period.
Correct.
So, and we are following those guidelines. So, as time progresses and we have more information, then we'll make those decisions accordingly.
Okay. How have you handled or worked with your guests who may have been at the facility during the shutdown, and as well as guests who had prearranged travel plans? How have you worked that out?
All travel plans, hotel stays that had been prepaid, we canceled without any penalties.
Okay.
It is the only thing that is right to do. In terms of all events, those who wish to have their deposits refunded to them, those were refunded. Some people have said to hold on to it, we want to have our event at a
Right.
later date.
Okay, not a problem. For many persons, this poses a very negative impact. We like to be optimistic. Is there anything positive at all from your perspective that could come from the situation of COVID-19 and the impact on the hotel industry?
It has made us become more aware of our situation, our circumstances, how we are affected worldwide by worldwide events. We have been prepping our staff. We've on matters not just related to their job, but in terms of financial planning, putting aside for a rainy day,
Indeed.
taking care of themselves from a health perspective, and paying attention to the details that ultimately affected us by this virus.
Indeed, lessons learned. Mrs. Dawson Marshall, thank you so much for the opportunity. We continue to wish you and your establishment the very best during this very tough time. And just like your positive attitude and the very optimistic approach, we do wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Special thank you to the lovely Mrs. Julia Dawson Marshall for giving us the concept and ideas as to the very resilient industry of tourism. Definitely a lot at stake. Still ahead, we are kind of bringing an end to some of the myths and rumors that have been circulating as it pertains to a lot of our essential agencies and the way moving forward. You don't want to miss this segment. All this and more when 284 News returns.
How may I assist you? Listen, you want top of power?
You want top of power?
Join the prepaid party with CCT and enjoy more affordable data plans, more top-up promotions, more savings with hero bundles, and more value for your money each and every Tuesday with Top Up Turn Up Tuesday. Visit a CCT store today or anywhere CCT Top Up is sold and top up your phone.
5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. You want top of power?
Ron, I thoroughly enjoyed that interview that you did prior, of course, to the whole crisis cramping down. And one of the things I want to note is the fact that the hospitality industry for sure will be one of the most heavily impacted.
Indeed.
And, you know, this is an industry that we thrive on here in the British Virgin Islands. I know a lot of persons are also calling for special consideration to be given to those persons when an economic stimulus
Yes.
package is revised
It's
for the
our, it's our
people.
bread and butter. That's, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it is. And it's been helping us cope and take care of our families for a very, very long time. So a lot is at stake here.
All right, viewers, we want to get into some of basic points that seemingly are confusing for many in the British Virgin Islands. Now, as we mentioned, a lot of the essential services are now open to the public between the hours of 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. We want to start off with the banks. Many of the banks are now reopened. More specifically, Banco Popular will be opened today, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, not only on the island of Tortola, but also on the island of Virgin Gorda. I know a lot of the other banks are also coming forward with confirmations on a similar routine to ensure that we all have access to those services. Now, there was a rumor circulating just today about the First Caribbean Bank only allowing a $100 ATM limit. Apparently, we said it was just a rumor. All the banks have confirmed that limits have been lifted and persons now have full access to their monies via the ATM. So, Ron, that's definitely something we
news,
wanted
absolutely.
to clarify.
Yes.
All right, money transfers, MoneyGram is also open. And as it relates to garbage, I know this is definitely a sore topic
Huge
ever since
concern,
the
yes.
onset of the curfew. A lot of persons have been wondering, how do I dispose of my garbage? Now, according to the press release yesterday from the government of the Virgin Islands, garbage will be picked up from tomorrow, Friday at 7 a.m. And that will continue every Monday, every Wednesday, and every Friday again at 7 a.m. As a result, residents are now encouraged to put garbage outside their homes on those days, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays between the hour 6 and 7 a.m. Additionally, the question of laundromats. I know a lot of persons depend on the laundromats, and according to the press conference yesterday as well, laundromats are officially closed and not considered one of the essential services. So persons, in this case, Ron, may be forced to
Yes.
just do a little bit of hand washing the little old school way.
Definitely. I can see how this could be a very annoying to a lot of persons. Nobody likes dirty laundry, but we prefer to have a healthy life. So.
Definitely. In relation to the visitors who are stuck in the territory beyond the closure of our borders, the Premier is now saying, and the government of the Virgin Islands, that persons overstaying will not be penalized. Those persons are now asked to reach out to the Department of Immigration and Labor once it reopens. Now, Ron, like the Minister of Health mentioned just yesterday, the BVI has now entered into what we call the Operation Action Stamp It Out Red Alert. And that simply means, when I looked at the statistics just today or before heading on to the newscast, I realized that within the 209 countries across the world who are affected by this virus, the BVI is still within the bottom 10. That means we only have 3 cases, and we want to remain that way. We want to ensure that the 3 persons who have been confirmed within the territory, that those persons recover speedily. And we're looking at the fact also that those 3 cases were imported. And that's why, again, it is so imperative that we abide by the rules, the measures that have been strongly reinforced so far within the BVI to ensure that we do not see what we're calling, or what experts are calling, a community transmission, or a case of community spread here in the British Virgin Islands. So again, we just want to encourage you viewers, all of you, to abide by the rules that are currently in place by the government of the British Virgin Islands. I also want to note to our viewers, despite the fact that our curfew ends on the 16th, we will see an extension of 3 additional days. As it stands, our law, like the Premier said, only allows for a consecutive curfew 14 days, but based on the fact that we will be out and about today, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, the government will put a new order out to ensure that we have 3 additional days. So persons, this is a good time for you to consider, instead of shopping for 14 days, you might want to consider 16 or 17 days instead.
And you know what's interesting, Jovan, on a much lighter note? You never know how much you eat. I remember those summers that you were home from school and you just found an excuse to snack. I think that's exactly what's taking place in our territory right now. With both the children and adult, we're at home, so we're just finding every avenue to go munch on stuff.
I have to keep myself occupied. I feel as if I gained 2 pounds just being home. I mean, I've been doing well on the other measures, but exercising certainly not. I definitely will need to hit up Joel for those videos.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
viewers, we have to wrap it up. We're out of time. That is it for today's news roundup. We want you to follow us for daily news updates on 284 Media and like us on Facebook at 284 Media and 284 BVI on Instagram, as well as Twitter. My name is Javon Wilson.
And I'm Ron Grant. We'll see you again tomorrow as we deliver your daily dose of local, regional, and international content. It has been our absolute pleasure keeping you informed amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, and we vow to continue to keep the residents of the beautiful British Virgin Islands, as well as our friends and families all around the world that are tuning in and worried and concerned about our well-being. We plan and vow to keep you informed. 284 News, your source for honest and impartial news right here on 284 Media. Happy Thursday, everybody. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
So you're saying I can ask this cat any question?
The cat is connected to the computer. You just type in the question, it will read his mind. There the answer comes.
You're the man! I've been looking for this for weeks.
Brilliant Hands and Minds tutoring services, one-on-one tutorials in math and English, intense homework assistance, academic enrichment, school projects, effective communication and public speaking development, sign language for adults and children on Saturdays only. Registered with the Virgin Islands High School Certificate Program, Brilliant Hands and Minds can help you too. Offering intense curriculum-based training to help you or your loved ones get their high school diploma. It's time to make your family's education a #1 priority. Hurry, space is limited. Brilliant Hands and Minds Learning Center. We are the trained education professionals.